The Albanese government is charging ahead with plans to force tech giants like Google and Facebook to pay for linking to news content, reviving its controversial media bargaining code. But with President Trump back in the White House and a tariff deadline just weeks away, Australia risks a digital showdown with Washington. And while Canada has already backed down under US pressure, Canberra doubling down for more. Let's get a bit more detail now from Professor Chris Berg from RMIT. Good to see you. You'd think that Anthony Albanese might be shaking after, well, Canada backing down on that digital tax.
You would think so. In fact, it wouldn't be the first time that the Albanese government has been very concerned about how the Trump administration would respond to its digital taxes and so forth. At the start of the year, they were quite visibly backing down from this policy, from, in fact, a range of policies that would target American tech companies. Since the election, though, there seems to be a new wind in the Albanese government's sails. Maybe there's a rereading of the situation in the United States, though I'd be surprised if that was accurate. And they seem to want to go very far ahead. Over the weekend, the government was very clearly signaling, stating that they wanted to move ahead with taxing the big tech companies, particularly Google and Facebook and TikTok, taxing them to pay for news content, to transfer money directly to Australia's journalism providers.
Now, you might think that running a news network like Ticker, that we get lots of lavish money from the government, like AAP does and the ABC does, or lots of lavish money from tech companies, but we don't. We fight along with everybody else. And so I've kind of watched and seen these big deals and said, well, how would these media companies go without them? I think we're about to find out. What I found interesting last week was the moment that Google told news companies they'll no longer be paying them for content. Straight away, the e-safety commissioner said that she wants to see Google and YouTube included in the ban for social media content for under 16s, which seems to be that it was a tax all along.
Well, I am sorry that Ticker isn't on the media bargaining train, unfortunately, but it has always been a tax. It's always been an incredibly unjustifiable tax as well. The government says that it's not a tax, it's a, quote, bargaining code. It's a incentive to try to structure bargaining, but it's bargaining that is being forced by the government itself. It's not bargaining that would exist in the absence of the bargaining code and political pressure. It's clearly a tax, and it's a tax specifically designed for one industry to pay another industry. Now, you'll note that one industry is very politically connected and one of those industries is not very politically connected. And
which is funny because in the United States, it's the other way around. So in Australia, the government has a great relationship with media proprietors like Kerry Stokes. And in the United States, it was the tech giant standing at the inauguration behind Donald Trump. And you can see that battle lines are very much drawn here. Let's have a listen to what Caroline Levitt said at the White House overnight. She was asked the question about Canada backing down. Have a look.
Prime Minister Carney in Canada caved to President Trump in the United States of America. And President Trump knows how to negotiate, and he knows that he is governing the best country and the best economy in this world, on this planet. And every country on the planet needs to have good trade relationships with the United States. And it was a mistake for Canada to vow to implement that tax that would have hurt our tech companies here in the United States. The president made his position quite clear to the Prime Minister, and the Prime Minister called the president last night to let the president know that he would be dropping that tax, which is a big victory for our tech companies and our American workers here at home.
So this week, Penny Wong, the Australian Foreign Minister, is jetting to DC to meet with Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, trying to lower the tariffs on Australia, the 10% and the 50% on steel and aluminium. But then at the same time, the Prime Minister saying we're going to go ahead with basically taxing US tech companies that we know are very close to the president's heart. How's that going to go?
It's not going to go well. I think the Canada episode just over the last couple of days has shown that these taxes are very much a live issue, that the debate about what the tariff rate should be is very much a live issue. In fact, Donald Trump has suggested that the time to bargain about tariffs is over. He's just going to be unilaterally setting them like he did in Liberation Day as well, and probably will be re-looking at what the appropriate tariff rate is for countries like Australia over again. So I don't think that this story is not at all finished, and I think the Albanese government is being somewhat complacent by assuming that the Trump administration won't notice that it's moving forward with a media bargaining code or a media bargaining tax that it had sort of backed down from the last time we were debating what tariff rate should be.
Not to put you on the spot, but what other options are there to try and save local media, right? So if you think about all of the job cuts we have seen in journalism and continue to see, you think about the Project being dropped last week because it cost too much. Binge and Stan in Australia and can't compete in the United States, but Americans can compete here. How do we protect our local culture at a time where it's coming under threat without tackling the people coming in and threatening it?
Look, there are public policy options that we have. We always have to remember that we do spend $1 billion a year on the ABC. So that's a really substantial investment that we put into media. Maybe that money isn't being used as it should.
1 billion, not that I'm counting.
I haven't looked at the budget for the last couple of years, obviously. But so we do spend a lot. But there are other policies that we could have as well. So you could have tax deductibility or non-profit status, giving tax deductibility for media organisations in Australia. There's lots of other things that we could do.
I think there'd be a lot of proprietors who'd be terrified of the idea of non-profit status for their multi-billion-dollar assets, but unfortunately, given what we are seeing in the industry, that seems to be the direction it's going. We've got to leave it there. Fascinating topic. We'll pick it up again next time. Chris Berg, appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you so much.